Good afternoon. My name is William Brown, and today I'm going to talk to you about interpersonal communication, my action plan. Being in this class was a challenge for me because I am not much of a talker. So one of my goals is actually I want to be more of an active listener. Talking is not much of the challenge itself. It's actually listening and being able to engage in listening and not coming up with the false pretenses while listening. Um, the goal was important for me because in interpersonal communication, it creates a balance for us as communicators. For me, it helped me with that balance of understanding how communication can help me verbally and non-verbally as well. It was also important to me because in my personal relationships, I want to be able to be more of an intimate communicator, overcome the challenges of avoidance a lot of times when communicating with my significant other. As mentioned in the class, that I learned from my past mistakes and prior relationships with people that communication can be affected in so many different ways. And we have to overcome all those challenges and barriers. So this particular project here is pretty much how what I learned this semester and how I plan on using what I learned to maintain the proper communication with other people. In the beginning of the class, we did the behavioral blend. Also, we did a interpersonal communication test. The behavioral blend, allowed me to understand that my thinking drives my behavior. In this case, my thinking drove my communication factors. The thing that reached out to me the most, so that I really noticed that by after completing the tests and the assessments, that in section C of the behavioral blend tend to be higher than all the other sections. In both the tester stated, "This is me," was 27, and what was expected of me was 18. The test kind of indicated that it's expected of me to be able to deal with people who are task oriented, but I work better with people who have a plan, which made sense for me. I'm a person who plans out everything, the small little detail of life. I feel like it has to have a plan, and when the plan is not going accordingly, then it creates a friction for me. And the behavior blend was really key on a lot of things that I thought that could help me be a better communicator. The interpersonal communication skills test indicated that I adapt to the words and actions of people, and I believe that empathy had to be understood. In the profession that I am, that I'm in, I believe that you have to have empathy for people. You have to put yourself in their shoes so that they can have an understanding that you are there to help them, and that in the process of you helping them, that you don't look down on them, that you're not trying to sympathize with them to make them feel better, and to make them feel better, and also to encourage them. So having that empathy is a very important thing to me. So both tests, both skills are really interesting, really key on that I felt that I had never done it before, and I saw some things that I possibly can change when my communication tends to be flawed. Speaking of flawed communications, the barriers that affect my communication, I have quite a few of them. Like I said, I've always been a quiet person. I've always been an introvert. So communication is really, a lot of times, not the best when it comes to me. My barriers can include from like, I listen to respond a lot of times. I make assumptions. The false pretenses, as I mentioned, facial expressions. Occasionally, my body language can be a little off. I could be listening to you, but I may have a particular facial expression or maybe in a certain way that makes you think that I am not listening, but I really could be listening to you. Sometimes the lack of attention is there, and the lack of self-awareness. Um, for me, I believe my barriers tend to harm my intimate communication a lot of times with friends or maybe sometimes family. My communication barriers give me a false pretenses, false perception of what the conversation can be. A lot of times I prejudge the conversation prior to it actually happening. My body language appearance to give off the image that I'm disengaged in what that person is saying. I tend to engage the conversations a lot of times with caution. Um, Going into that caution aspect of it is because of that false perception of what I think the conversation will be. Working in the field where I'm in now, communication is very important. I have to be able to be mindful of my interactions with people and not give them that idea that I'm not listening. What they're saying is not important. The verbal barriers, miscommunication, not speaking up, not making eye contact, not giving that person my undivided attention, nonverbal barriers, me slouching, me with my hand on my face, or just looking stressed out like I don't want to listen. And we all tend to do that. We all tend to have those type of barriers where we don't give the person our undivided attention. Certain things distract us. If you are at work and you're working and someone comes to ask you a question, you're already distracted because you're engaged in your work. So to listen to somebody talk to you, you're not going to give them your undivided attention right then. So it happens to us. It may not be intentional, and sometimes it may be intentional, but it can happen to anyone. Also, another barrier that I have is poor listening. Um, a lot of times, misunderstanding what the person is saying to me, not giving that indication of asking the questions of getting them to repeat themselves. There's nothing wrong with asking someone to repeat themselves. I know a lot of us hate repeating ourselves, but sometimes you have to, just so the person who is listening to you can get the understanding of what you're saying. Um, John Stewart mentioned that the inhale exhale metaphor. Inhale is breathing, exhaling is breathing out. It's the same thing with communication. When you inhale the information, you're listening, and you're listening with the understanding. When you're exhaling information, it's pretty much your response, and it's a cycle as it goes in. You don't exhale before you inhale. So I have to make sure that my listening is up to par and I'm not just hearing. But when you're hearing, you're not understanding what the speaker is saying. To help me get this goal in place, I have resources and strategies. One of the resources that I have came from actually the Burley Allen, the book, Communicating with the Process of Openness. Being self-aware, being self-acceptance, and trust. When you're self-aware, you have the understanding that the conversation or the communication between you and other parties, you know what you're saying. You're not just speaking out of context when you're discussing certain things. You're not just responding without the proper listening. Another one is allow the speaker to talk before I develop my response. And a lot of times I don't. I have that false perception of, oh, this is going to be a bad conversation. This is going to be something that I don't want to talk about at this moment, and it creates a bigger issue. Be proactive about the flat brain theory. Get my emotions in check within the communication factors. Your emotions start in your stomach and goes to your brain. I need to understand that if I have those false perceptions, then my emotions are not going to be up to par. I created an action plan to help me get those things in order. Things such as engage in listening, listen to understand, utilize the talking cards. Know my goals as a speaker and know my goals as a listener. And then take ownership of the problems that come with communication. I know what my flaws are. I need to take ownership of those things when I'm communicating with other people. Also, show signs of empathy and not sympathy. And remember that my body language is a form of communication. And my body language is important during the communication factors. And that will conclude what my action plan is and what I learned this semester and how it's going to help me in interpersonal communication